And we're on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode number 4 in this show that I call Let's Talk, and the alternative name is Crypto Dunk. So I'm here today with Gary, the credit medic from Funding Gym, and I'm going to continue the topic that I started yesterday talking about Ethereum. I mentioned something about Dragonchain, and I know Gary's very excited to talk about Dragonchain. So I called him up and we decided to have a little stream to talk a little bit about Dragonchain. Now, Dragonchain is the coin that was originally researched and developed. It's a blockchain. It's a hybrid, semi-private, semi-open blockchain that was originally developed by a huge team within Disney, abandoned, and then released as open source. As a part of Disney open source, and then picked up by the same people that were working on that project in Disney, picked up, they formed a nonprofit, Dragonchain Inc. nonprofit, picked up the technology because it was open source, just like Bitcoin, right? And they made it into the project and they launched an ICO on top of that. And so far really reached the 20x as all of the investors usually expect from the ICO, right? And so it's a very interesting concept. It's another, I would say it's another competitor to Ethereum. It's not, but more a competitor to Hyperledge, IBM, and Microsoft Azure, because we're talking more about business usage of it. We're talking more about the private blockchain. Usually when we talk about private blockchain, it means private sector, it means the business, right? So very interesting that, Disney was behind it. I don't honestly think that right now Disney is going to be heading towards this direction because they just, went full on with their RFID bands, and their magic bands are used all over Disney right now. They're used to access rooms. They used to access the fast track lines and everything. So I'm not sure whether Disney is serious about their blockchain technology, but hey, they did the job. The project is there technologically. It's super solid. It just went through the ICO, and here we are. Gary, I pass the word to you. What do you think about Dragonchain? Tell us a little bit about your experience with this coin.
All right, guys, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I am maybe a little bit closer to Dragonchain than others in the crypto space, and I'll say that really quickly in some of my background, some of my history. Many may know me personally, but many may not know that I was married for over 10 years in a relationship from age 20 until about 30 years old. And during that time, there was a great relationship, all these good things, but it had a window of my life. And what I came into in that relationship was Disney. And the reason why is because my now ex, her parents are the vice presidents at the level of controlling everything that's a real estate holding, a physical, tangible property of Disney. So at that time, a long time ago, it was everything from the Queen Mary cruise ships, all of the physical properties that Disney held at that time. Now, also, I do know from that era, when I was 19, 20 years old, when I was first initiated and brought into that fold, that Disney had gone through a metamorphosis. And this metamorphosis originally was, again, the 1940s and 50s and cartoons and the beginnings of a theme park and Walt Disney and this cultural norm for Americans that was exporting across the world. So you would see a Mickey Mouse or a Donald Duck cartoon. You would hear about Snow White, and you would see some movie that was released. There was nature films and things like that. It was really the first Discovery channels. It was the first real bringing into American television that was exported abroad across the world to see exotic locations and things like that. So really culturally, Disney became a window for Americans to see the world, and also became a window for the world to see American culture that was developing in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So this was really the golden age of what Disney was as a brand. Now, it wasn't necessarily a corporate empire. It wasn't necessarily strategic about its acquisitions like many tech companies are in this era. You know, Facebook will acquire something versus crush it, you know, and fold it into its organization. Same thing with Google and other tech companies we're more familiar with in this tech space. However, what I want to say is that Disney in the 50s changed in the 90s. And in the 90s, it became more about multimedia. It became more about intellectual property. It became more about acquiring major companies like ABC, American Broadcasting Company. It started its own media outlets, and it really did embrace technology. So originally, when Kira was saying something about blockchain and whether or not they're very strong, or, you know, they really were putting it to use, they were. However, the concept of blockchain, in some ways, there are public blockchains and there are private blockchains. And to develop something like an Ethereum, there is a lot that is public and can be not necessarily, I mean, you can go through the effort to and the expense to encrypt your data on a public blockchain. However, when you're talking about intellectual property, and again, Disney has their fingers in many, many, many areas, not just what you think as the surface. Everything to do with animation, everything to do with animatronics and robotics, everything to do with not just the Disneyfication of a travel experience. That's one thing I want to show in just a second here is if you do go, I'm going to just quickly share my screen. And if you go to Disney, let's go through a couple of these pages. Kirill, are you able to see my screen right now?
Yeah, sure.
You are? So what I'm talking about is, again, visit Disney. And again, this is just a real quick cover about what they are. They are parks and travel, but they are also cruise ships. They are also theme parks, of course. They are video games. They have a major representation in the video game world, video and all these other media outlets. And one of those reasons is also because Disney not long ago bought Lucasfilms. Lucasfilms, of course, people may know because of Star Wars and other things that George Lucas has produced over his lifetime. You may also know that all of the Pixar related and all of the Industrial Light and Magic, right? Industrial Light and Magic, which is incredibly used and very profitable businesses that George Lucas owned at the time to develop all of the CGI related to most of the movies that you watch now. Most of the media that you watch and see have a CGI element, and that CGI element is often produced by Industrial Light and Magic. So if you watched a Ron Howard movie, if you watched a George Lucas movie, if you like Steven Spielberg, you've watched Disney material, okay? So keep this in mind when it comes to intellectual property, when it comes to digital assets, right? When it comes to the protection of those digital assets. This is the reason that you may not have heard of Disney's blockchain, because they were keeping it in-house for so long. And in 2014, 15, 16, during this era, they were building it primarily to vault their information and to exchange it between their different entities that they control. So that's why you may not have heard so much about it. Now, with the incredible growth, not just of Bitcoin and Ethereum and other types of blockchain technologies, Disney has reevaluated what they want to use their blockchain for. And there are parts of their in-house system that is encrypted and absolutely is underneath their control, but they have opened up their platform really because specifically American CEOs that grew up in the 1950s as little kids and went to Disney, they trust the brand. They trust what the history of 75 years, I think, of Disney existing. Maybe the first film was in the 1930s, Steamboat Willie or something like that. And so this long arc of an American company, a success story, and an American icon of Walt Disney and all of the affiliations, American education systems, which are par none, such as California Arts Institute, which is down south in Los Angeles. It is a graphic design. It is a creative center. Even people like, I can't remember the names of so many people that I met at Cal Arts that are major movie people now as far as producers and such. What's his name? Tim? I can't remember. Anyways, but it's really is an epicenter of creativity. And also, even as a reference of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs has had a lot of interaction with Imagineers, a lot of people related to Pixar when he was part of these different cultural icons, and it was because he trusted them with some of their with some of his technology as well. So I just want to represent that Disney is more than a roller coaster, and it's more than just some cartoons of history that may be remembered fondly. They are a powerhouse inside of the American Fortune 50 companies. And that's why I want to talk about them as a blockchain as well, as far as what they are doing that is different than the other projects that you may be seeing. Now, when they first made this available, there's a couple of comments. I'll pass this back to you in a moment, just for a second, Carol, so that you can comment about, before I move on, what was your experience or knowledge from an outside perspective? I was raised in America, and my parents were raised in a Disney version of America of the 1950s and 60s and 70s. So I have been steeped in a trust of Disney, right? Me as a cultural norm, I have been steeped in, oh, that's what Disney is, okay? And it just becomes like breathing in some way. I'm not in it all the time anymore since I was 30 years old, but I'm very familiar with it from that era, and I still have a trust in them as a company, as how they have managed their brand and how sensitive they are about their intellectual property. So I understand it from that perspective, but from an international perspective, what can you say about your perception of Disney when it comes to technology, when it comes to something that you are embracing, which is blockchain and it is cryptocurrency based?
So first of all, for me, I've learned about Disney open source technologies when I was researching Dragoncoin. So I never heard about Disney doing so much open source projects as they do, and it was before I knew about Disney theme parks, obviously, all the animations that they were doing. I knew that they bought Pixar and LucasArts, and they're extensively doing it there. However, my knowledge was definitely limited, and it's definitely not like I must trust. It's just another corporation for me, just another. Because obviously I was raised with their cartoons, but their cartoons have nothing to do with inner politics or everything that happens necessarily in the industry. So for me, it was more of random, unconnected experiences of cartoons and movies and some knowledge that I may know about the company. Now, do you want to continue on your
let me make a couple of comments about that, because again, when we're talking about who is going to utilize any blockchain project, right? That's one of the things that really, we have a lot of speculation inside of the ICOs. We have a lot of speculation in some ways about, you know, the actual use, the in case use of a token, how this will be a benefit to the holder. Other than just a store of value, which Bitcoin apparently is a store of value. Ethereum is a store of value kind of concept, even though it's not Ethereum's not necessarily a currency specifically meant to be. It's more of a smart contracts and such. And other projects you may believe in, such as solar power, or you believe in something that is being funded by a token, right? A project that makes you know, the Internet of Things, or machines talk to each other, or maybe we're going to fly in supercars, whatever that project may be. You may be believing in that project specifically, and using a cryptocurrency somehow to participate, either participate in the success of the project financially, or because you want to utilize that token to actually get something out of putting, like a vending machine, putting a token into a machine to get something back more than just the more tokens, right? So it's not a casino, right? So you have to look at the utility. And when it comes to blockchain in a operating multi-hundred-billion-dollar company, I don't know how much they make, but they have their fingers in so much. And it is specifically a intellectual property technology kind of company. It's dealing with media. It's dealing with everything. I think that they're bigger than Sony, really, as far as what they're involved with in technology that may not be on the surface branded as Disney, but they own and control. They are very, very powerful. And one of the interesting things is, when it comes to this gets into politics. I'm going to stay away from politics, but when it gets into us exporting Americana or intellectual technology, and we send something abroad, we talk about this in Amazon FBA and things like that. We say, okay, I want to get this manufactured in China or Bangladesh, and then I'm going to ship it back, and I'm going to sell it to my local market at a cheaper price, right? It's not that big of a deal when it comes to I'm going to manufacture a chair, or maybe I'm going to get a CD produced or something like that, right? You say, oh, I need to encode that CD before it gets produced abroad because somebody might get my intellectual property, right? So there's all kinds of reasons that we don't necessarily want things to go abroad. And in some ways, public blockchains are going abroad. A lot of these technology companies that are building their own versions of blockchain, they do have risk. And whether it's real risk or whether it's perceived risk, when intellectual property is going to use that Fortune 50 company like Disney, like Boeing, like Amazon, like other companies that are based in Seattle across the street from where Dragonchain is based. So these sorts of things, American CEOs are a little bit protectionist about how they hold, host, or interact with their intellectual property. Now, again, Boeing is a major military and also airplane producer, right? They produce all sorts of devices. They deal with NASA. They deal with our super jet systems and things like that in the military system. And likely they will build their own blockchain. However, when it comes to trusting a platform that is established, something like Dragonchain has a great appeal as far as how quickly they can ramp up on something that is trusted versus building their own from scratch, right? So we come into this, again, as ICOs and as businesses dealing with blockchain are growing and becoming incredibly funded. I just was looking this morning at the market cap, and the market cap is something like $600 billion right now. By the end of this year, it is estimated to have a $5 trillion market cap. So you're still seeing a huge surge of money. However, money is not labor force. It's not directly translatable to labor force. And what I mean by that is when you're talking about someone that is a game theorist, someone that is an economist, someone that deals with the development of blockchain to keep it secure, as well as interoperability, right? There are only 500 or 600 people that have these kinds of skill sets. And right now, there are universities that are growing and booming, block geeks and things like that, to try to train people and educate them in how to interact and build out the technologies that are right now being funded. So when it comes to investing, when I think about putting money into either it's an ICO or an existing project or something along those lines, I have to look at who has an existing blockchain. What do you think that they have put into intellectual property being protected, and what systems do you think that they already have embraced to protect their multi-billion dollar entities not entities, assets, their multi-billion dollar assets that are digital? the first thing that comes to mind to me is Disney. And that is very powerful to me, whether it's true or whether it's believed because of the trust factor that I've had for many years in how Disney has operated their companies for 75 years in the American cultures and exported abroad. You know, Disney, obviously they have Tokyo and they have Paris, and maybe this is an interesting entertainment thing for a Parisian, but it may not be steeped the same way as the American culture has embraced for all of this time. And when I think about people that are the CFO, the CTO, the COO, CEO of Fortune 50 companies that are American-based, I think that that trust factor goes a long way. I think that that branding goes a long way. And the fact that they are haven't been public about what they do with blockchain doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing, in my opinion, because they have been really, I've seen it from the background, and I saw it from the 90s. My era of experience was, you know, in the 90s into the early 2000s. And they have grown exponentially in what they're involved with. So when it comes to a potential blockchain, I do like them a lot just from that standpoint. Now, they did separate, and they separated, I think, for business liability and logistical reasons, and also for trust factor reasons when they deal with other companies that they may like Disney, but they also want to know that their own intellectual property at Boeing is protected and not owned or accessible by Disney. So they have built out a platform that is very interesting. And I'm going to share a couple of pages. One page, of course, is if you go to dragonchain.com, you should see this screen. And when you see this, you can see, of course, that they're going to have more than just a platform. Now, when you talk about ICOs, you talk about things that are going to be tokenized, assets that are going to be tokenized. You can look at it from a few different steps. One step, you can say, this is going to provide a service, or this is going to provide a product. And those are interesting, and they may have a flip kind of investment mentality. You may say, I'm going to keep that for a little while, and then it's going to, I'm going to flip it out because, you know, it's a service product I don't really embrace. The more interesting platforms that are in the top 20 when you come to market cap, crypto market cap evaluations, you would say, this is a platform. Like Ethereum is a platform, and on top of that are digital applications, right? On top of that are, you know, Ethereum provides the tools, and out of those tools you can build something else. That's what Dragonchain is doing and has been doing for years, maybe as long as Vitalik has been doing Ethereum. I don't know how long they were public about it, but at least in 2014-15 is when they started really putting at least the public side of their use of blockchain inside their systems. Now, they did separate about a year ago to perform an ICO and see if it would get self-funded. And part of that is I'm sure it's a legal reason why they separate. Disney cruise ships are a separate entity and were separated before they ever got into the business of cruise ships. And they have a system to do this.
Yeah, just comment on the separation. So as far as I know, the original code was developed in Seattle, and it was a huge team working on that. And then it was released just like a lot of Disney software. Apparently, it was released as an open source. So it was released on the GitHub, and I have a link here that shows the original post when it was released. And what happened after is that ex-employees of Disney picked it up, but as you say, totally separately from the original company. So originally, it has a great use case, and in the article that I found, they talk about 20 use cases that were explored during the building of the platform between 2015 to 2016. And so I like that you mentioned the fact about the intellectual property, because definitely when we talk about Disney, Disney has tons of intellectual property, and we can imagine that the blockchain was used in this way, because how else would they possibly use it? So anyway, what came up after that was the solid technology that was built by a well-funded team, and you know, the technology was picked up by the people who, trust this technology, by the same people who've been working on that technology, but on the behalf of Disney, right? And so those people, they start to give it a new breath. So I'm not sure about how Disney like super involved in that. One thing that I'm sure, and this is a great thing to be sure of, is that that technology was first implemented in a company that is as huge as Disney, right? And it was built for its own needs, right? So we're talking about potentially about something that, can handle some scale, right? And how it's positioned right now, as we just saw on the website, how it's positioned right now is that it's the playground, right? Like just like Ethereum, it's a playground for developers to build on top of that. Now, another thing I wanted to mention right away about the copyrights is that the first real client of Dragonchain is the Italian company that was it's just on their website. Lateral or something. One second. Look Lateral, right? So it's an Italian company and they're trading art, and obviously they are using the Dragonchain as virtual certificates for art, right? So it makes sense that such a company, would collaborate with Dragonchain, because Dragonchain is providing some kind of private security, right, for intellectual property. And we have this example of Disney, right? So currently the team, I mean, at the moment of the ICO, the team was 8 people. There was the CEO. His name is one moment. It was just here, Joe Roets, right? So he was one of the original developers of the blockchain, and he picked it up, and he's the CEO of the company right now. And 4 more people on the team are developers, and 3 people are in the marketing / business. So it was a small team who started this. Now their ICO went pretty huge, and I think this is because it's it's a well-trusted team, because it's a team that's been working on this project on behalf of Disney, right? Then the project itself is very solid. It has a good use case because Disney was using it. I'm not sure if they're using it right now, but then they, on top of having all this solid experience and background, they decided to launch an ICO on top of that. Now Disney right away said that they have nothing to do with this ICO, and we understand why, because Disney doesn't want to be, involved in something as minuscule for them as ICO, or something as dangerous and unproven for now. So they don't want to touch their public persona with this at all, right? They want to stay private.
Exactly. This is some of the interdynamics. I won't say that there's a direct correlation. However, they are very brand sensitive. Yeah. And as a brand sensitive company, that a lot of their value comes from Americana, and so there is an element of protectionism, and there is an element of public reveal. However, when it also, here, keep in mind that when you see a Mickey Mouse that's not exactly correct in South Korea, and you go, I think that's a counterfeit, they get sued. When it talks to brand protection, when it comes to iconography, when it comes to the script that is, or the typography of how you spell Disney, they protect this information. There's intellectual property with a army of lawyers, international lawyers. And so again, yes, they have separated, and this is a technology that was built in-house for private use. By the same people that are part of this ICO now, and the leadership of this ICO, of this now this existing token. But keep in mind, even if it's not publicly declared, Disney is all over this. When we talk about the numbers in a few minutes, and we talk about, yes, they did have a successful ICO, but it wasn't a slam dunk. And when it comes to a slam dunk, one of the reasons why is because what we see often inside of an ICO is that there is a bonus for participation. I'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about B token or some other examples. But when you have an ICO, often there is an incentive of a bonus number or percentage of tokens that will be rewarded to the early investor, to the person that says,
right?
What?
For the pre-sale.
Yes, on pre-sales, on close friends and family that participate financially, pre-sales before I would open public ICO, accredited investor requirements. There's all kinds of reasons that a potential ICO would have stages of when they would sell a certain number of tokens before it's actually made available on an exchange where you can just buy it directly. So when it came to Disney, or to the Dragon chain, the Dragon token ICO, what they did is very democratic. What they did was they made it no bonuses. And it was not held back as 70% is going to be for the investors and the people that build it out and our own value. We're going to sell only 30% to the public in an ICO. That is not what they did. What they did was they held back 5% for incubators, okay, that are going to be hosted on the Dragon chain. So they're going to have innovations that are funded initially through, of course, ICO participation and people involving and investing in the incubator project that is on the Dragon chain. And only people that can buy into those new ICOs that are hosted on the Dragon chain have to be Dragon token holders. So that's an interesting thing I'll talk a little bit more in depth about in a bit. But what's interesting is on their initial ICO, they made, I think, 55% open ICO, okay? And what that meant was if they said, hey, we're going to have it from November 1st until the end of November, we're going to have a 30-day window, and you didn't get penalized by missing the first day. You could think about it. You can mull it over. You can do your due diligence. You could research before the window for ICO was over, right? And during this time of 55%, they said, we're going to make it public to everybody. There's not a bonus structure. There's not an early participation structure. There's not, even though you had, anybody could participate. Americans could participate. And again, when we talked about a few months ago, the idea of bans and countries and banks and things like that that are preventing involvement in ICOs through tokenization or through Bitcoin or other examples, this is an interesting play on Disney's power politically. So what was interesting is that they made 55% available and public, and you didn't have a penalty about when you got involved as long as it was inside that window. And initially it was 12 cents, right? And what they did was they said, here's the value. They didn't have a hard cap. If you have a hard cap, another example is a hard cap. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. But a hard cap, maybe they would say, we're going to, once we reach this amount of money, nobody else can participate in this stage of the ICO release. In the pre-sale, we want to generate this amount of money. And once that is reached, then no more, right? So you can find yourself unable to participate. But because they made it available, 55%, and they made a window of only a month, but you had a window of a month to participate, it's very interesting scenario that's different from others. Now, then they went through, so you could have got in at 12 cents, and it's like, oh my God, I should have got in at 12 cents because that was that stage. Then in December, they only had been released on, and they're really not aggressive about marketing their blockchain. They're aggressive about building out the technology that other companies like Boeing and Amazon and other examples may utilize. They were actually across the street from Bittrex. Bittrex is based in Seattle as well. So when you talk about exchanges, they're not on the big exchanges at all yet. They are on, I think it was Ether Delta. And when Ether Delta, unfortunately, their exchange got hacked. And when it got hacked and they lost some money, then people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to deal with Ether Delta. It's tedious. It's hard to work with. It's cumbersome. Plus, they got some money ripped off, right? So Ether Delta was the first one that picked up their token. And then they were on KuCoin. And on KuCoin is actually the reason I discovered KuCoin is because I was looking for this token. This is a token I was looking for. I had heard about it 6 months ago or something like that when Kirill and I attended a conference, a blockchain conference in Los Angeles. I'd heard about it just before that. And then I for some reason, because of other excitement or other businesses I'm involved with, I forgot. And I was like, oh man, I forgot they have something. I don't know if they're doing ICO. I know they have a blockchain, and I forgot. But then it triggered in my brain whenever I started looking for it, and I found KuCoin, and from KuCoin I bought Dragonchain, and at the time I was like, oh, it's 74 cents or 78 cents, 74 cents, and then I waited like 4 or 5 days for money to get, you know, basically from one exchange into the KuCoin exchange, and once it was in and I could play in buying an altcoin, I was like, okay, let me do it, and I did it at 79 cents, and I was very I don't know what this is going to be, because it's kind of like a medium kind of play. You know, it is Disney. It has billions of dollars of background and history of developments and intellectual property protection and thought processes. And it did start in 2014 to 17 as far as existing, right? And it's the same leadership of the previous project that is now taking on the ICO and the new project. So I was like, I think it's kind of like a safe play. And I think I should get some, right? And I got some. And I wouldn't say that I went super heavy, but I got some. And that was on the 25th, on Christmas. That was our 24th is the first day I bought any. And then I made sure that that worked and I could move it to a hard wallet. And then the 25th, I didn't have anybody in my life and I was bored. And I said, let me just work on some tokens. And I bought at 79 cents. And then I thought about moving some other assets around, and I bought again at 82 cents, 81, 82 cents, something like that. And I also was thinking it's because it's on only one obscure low volume exchange at the moment. KuCoin only has 200,000 or 300,000 users at the moment. Ether Delta isn't necessarily the best outlet, a small exchange to work with. And so I have a strong feeling, this is not advisement, this is not investment advisement, anything like that, but when it comes to putting money into something that is in perception considered blue chip, like a Disney brand, in perception has an existing operational platform that is used for digital asset management and distribution and security, I think Disney is a good safe bet for that. Now that they're doing other companies, or they're making a platform available for other companies, it becomes even more interesting. And so I thought that back on, you know, this is the 3rd or 4th, so like 8 days ago, 9 days ago. And that was, let me share this real quick, get to my screen. And so I thought that, oh, I don't know what that was weird.
No, that was me, sorry.
Okay, so now you should see my screen, and we're talking again about Dragonchain. Dragonchain is, like I said earlier, it's more than just a platform. A platform is, of course, the development tools, the infrastructure. That it is also an incubator. It will be an incubator to host other things, and I advise you to go through this website in general. This is their public reveal about what they're doing. It is a marketplace, and of course, marketplace is mostly about library smart contracts, qualified vendors. You know, it's the network of you know, almost like a LinkedIn, but specific to this particular platform. So
it's really where Ethereum is going. It's really where Ethereum is going. It's also a platform that provides tools and marketplace for the people who develop, you know, the smart contracts or projects on top of this blockchain. So I see it really as a very solid business use case, you know?
Right. So when you see, like you were commenting about Joe Roets, and phrase that he uses on the website is, unlike existing platforms, with Dragonchain, you can retain complete control of your data. Again, when it comes to intellectual property, digital assets, releasing those into a public blockchain like Ethereum is risk averse. I mean, risk averse companies don't want to do that necessarily, right? They either want to build it in-house.
It's a direct competition to Hyperledge, because when I was attending the Hyperledge master classes, their main thing, they were saying the very same words. You would use it in order to, you know, use it privately, basically within the business. You don't want your internal business information going outside. So we see Dragonchain as a very solid rival, I think, to the Hyperledge. And
right.
You know, right now we have Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, right, that is trying to unite JP Morgan and Intel and Microsoft, and, you know, they're trying to come up with solutions. But, you know, Ethereum was first to come and it got their momentum. We're going to see more and more corporations looking into potential partnerships with somebody to, you know, start their R&D. And Dragonchain, I see Dragonchain as one of the, you know, sweet choices for them, because they're going to be choosing between Hyperledge Fabric, between Dragonchain, between Ethereum. Ethereum, if it's a private version of Ethereum, because what they do right now, the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, they work with the, you know, the regular version of Ethereum, and, you know, this is just public. So definitely the market for private solutions, for private blockchains, is definitely there. All of the enterprises, like, once they're gonna start slowly to get in the game, that's where they're going to be at. So yeah, what you're showing right now, the Dragonchain, is definitely going to be one of the choices on their radar.
Yeah. You can, and again, when it comes to having the, you know, you can pay for the very, very best, right, to develop your idea or project in technology. I don't know how easy it is to hire a developer that is a specialist in blockchain development and right? When it comes to the brain trust, as far as the, you know, money is one thing, but people want to work on interesting projects, right? And so when it comes to this neighborhood, of course, we are inside of Silicon Valley. We are inside of Los Angeles media culture. This is where we're based. But also Seattle has an incredible history in technology. First example, of course, being Microsoft, as far as, you know, where Bill Gates lives down the street. But Microsoft, of course, being based, Valve, huge company based next door. Bittrex being one of the bigger volume cryptocurrency exchanges. T-Mobile, Getty Images. Again, Getty Images has almost all of the photography rights for just about, I don't know, everything. Getty Images controls so much as far as intellectual property that they may have the wealth to do so, but they may not have the ability for a set amount of time to really ramp up a team that's developing their own version of a blockchain. Disney, of course, being on the other side of the lake, Expedia, Tableau, Boeing, right? This is really the economic engine of Seattle. These major companies are really everything else based around those companies. Costco is based just south of this map image. Other companies that are major brands, major volume, major value are based in this neighborhood. And when it comes to intellectual property protection, and it comes to who has already started not even started, but developed a fully operational blockchain platform, the Dragonchain is very appealing.
You mentioned point, and I found. Wait, why do I hear my echo? A second. Can I hear my echo now again?
I think it's
okay. It's better. Okay, so Boeing. So I went on CoinDesk to search for some news, and it appears that on the December 18th, we have some news about Boeing looking into blockchain, supposedly with releasing of their latest patent, and they're looking primarily for to fix their GPS system, right? To fix some kind of spoofing or problems with the GPS system. Now, I'm not sure if Dragonchain would be able to do so, but since you mentioned, I just started searching right away, and yeah.
So when you talk about, you did make comment earlier, and it was about artwork, and we were talking about the first use cases of this outside of Disney.
Yeah, they already have the artwork points.
So if you have $100,000, which isn't huge money, but it's big, you know, it's reasonable money for a painting, right? You see paintings that are 100 million, 200 million. And of course, the Mona Lisa is going to be verified in different ways other than just the blockchain associated with an RFID or something. Yeah. So, but when it comes to other maybe lesser known artists that still you want to certify and give the provenance, it makes sense that you would deal with art. And it makes sense that Disney, which has, again, this collectability, and as far as Americana, a fondness, a human desire to collect something that, you know, takes you back to your childhood. That's one reason why Disney cells, which are hand-painted cellular materials that have, you know, the original work of Snow White or Dumbo, or you know, some kind of character that somebody that was a child was fond of, and later in life they have some money, they're able to buy that original cell and put it on their wall as art. It makes sense that you would want to make sure that's not counterfeit. You would want to make sure that the provenance is correct, that it really came from Disney Studios, and it really is an original hand-painted piece that is like an art because it has a collectability to it, an authenticity to it. So it makes sense that Disney would be that the blockchain would be related to this provenance. And when it comes to something like Boeing, which you're talking about, of a GPS spoofing, you're talking about a $500 million airplane not hitting a mountain. You're talking about a, you know, livelihood. You're talking about brand that can affect whether an airline, a whole airline, goes out of business or not because of one horrible mistake. Airplanes, yes, there are pilots and there are people that are helping you, but for a majority of the operations of the airplane staying in the sky, this is computers. There's so many technology preventions of human error in a modern airplane jumbo liner, you know, that Boeing produces. So this is one of the reasons that trusting Boeing in some way, trusting anybody as an outside to verify GPS spoofing through a blockchain. And if they are selecting this particular blockchain, that's another stamp of approval to me, because of how sensitive, not just to the rise and fall of the economics of a company, but to the living of the people on an airplane. That seems to mean a lot to me about even using them. Boeing is very strict about who their vendors and their subcontractors of every nut, bolt, and screw of every part of their airplanes. And so when it comes to the actual technology side, utilizing some form of a platform for blockchain, that's actually pretty powerful to me. And it signs off again on the idea that, it signs off again to me at least, the idea that an American CEO might make a decision because of a fondness and a trust factor of the brand.
So you wanted to also talk about Bitcoin, I remember, and to make a comparison, because at some point during this talk, we spoke about how Dragonchain, they did their ICO the way they did. So I remember in the beginning of the video, you also wanted to compare them with Bitcoin.
Right.
I think it's a great time.
So I'm going to switch over to this. There's two things I'm going to comment about. One is, as an example, let me share this screen, and you should be able to see. So this is from a Medium article. I'm going to go to the very top just so you can see that it's a Medium article that was written in October. All right, so it's
crypto judgment.
Right. So it's talking about you know, the multi-purpose, and it's a Medium, and it's like you just said, it's a crypto judgment is the people that wrote this particular article. And what I did find and really like about what they wrote was, of course, you should read the whole thing for yourself. It talks about, of course, the how it's a serverless system as far as scalable, all these things about the technology behind what they're doing. It also talks a little bit about the incubator element that I really like a lot, because I want to be able to participate in things that are being incubated on the platform. And in order to do that, I need to own some Dragon coin in order to participate. So they're going to use it as a funding model also for their future projects. So I like that a lot. The other thing, of course, about the team, we talked about that a little bit, and how the team basically have moved over from being a paycheck from Disney to being a separate entity. And I think that they're doing that for liability reasons, as well as to be more open with these Fortune 50 companies, instead of feeling that it's privatized in a Disney environment. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is really a comparison. And the comparison is what we were saying earlier about how we typically have seen ICO modeling. And we have seen that whales, or people that have the accredited paperwork to say that they're going to participate in a pre-sale, they may say, I think I'll get into your project if I can get 50% more tokens than anybody else for the same price point. If I can basically buy in at a discount, then sure, I'll do your ICO. Because what they are doing, it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's capitalism. But what they're doing is they're saying, I will buy in, and on the hype and on the marketing and on the opening to the public sale, I'll already be 50% ahead because I have a bonus, right? And on the release on an exchange, I'll already be ahead because I can dump half and still keep half. And if I dump half, I get a payout because I'm still ahead of what the open sale ICO people bought it at, right? So there's a whole mechanism that is part of the hype cycle. I don't want to say it negatively, but the pump and dump cycle of a lot of ICOs, right? You may say, oh, I can get 10 times my money in a month. If I buy now, I get 50% discount, and then because I get the discount, I sell off at open, right? So this is just a quick flip mentality. Now, Disney didn't do, or the Dragonchain didn't do this. What they did was they first made it allowable to all U.S. citizens to allow to participate. And again, there was restrictions about different countries having different bans and different restrictions and things like that, even where a U.S. can't participate abroad, or abroad couldn't participate here. And that was interesting that it was allowed, right? The other thing was that they were going to hold it for a narrow window. This was, we talked earlier about EOS raising as much as they have by being basically a year-long ICO. One, that's I'm not in love with a year-long ICO. I feel like that's just like a stall on actually creating technology.
We discussed it in our previous video on EOS.
Right. So and then they would accept, and they were doing it. But what was interesting was, again, their distribution. 55% being open in the public sale, not having a pre-sale, 20% being vested in the team. I can understand that, of course. 10% being a Dragonchain Foundation, which is a separate foundation. 10% being Dragonchain Incorporated, which is basically paying for their operations and so forth and development. Infrastructure, things like that, that they may not have bought directly from Disney and they needed to acquire. 5% being a funding incubator, a Dragon Fund incubator for new potential projects that they will participate in, as well as outside funding from people like myself that will participate in future ICOs on the platform. But what was interesting is that the company did not have a maximum cap and will distribute all tokens in relation to the total number of contributions. And the reason that I like this, he likes this, and the reason I like it as well, is because it made sure that every interested contributor is able to participate and that there were not bonus levels. Everyone is treated equally. This is a very democratic way to crowdfund. If you're going to be on Kickstarter and you're going to find out that somebody else, that they went through all this, they had to make sure that they made $200,000 per year. They had $1 million worth of assets. They got signed off by a CPA and by a lawyer to make sure that they were, quote unquote, an accredited investor. That's the way that B-token is not a negative token. It's just an example token. And with their sale, again, you can do your research about them. I'm not advocating or taking away from B-token. I think that they're a good ICO and they're going to do really, really well. But what I wanted to cover was, because it's just simply to explain it, they have a token distribution example on their roadmap on their website. And this is just a typical example. A typical example of many ICOs work in this way. They may have a private sale, and the private sale stage, because they're only trying to raise $15 million, I did like, and I still like, the fact that they weren't trying to make $1 billion in order to compete with Airbnb. They didn't need it for their team. They don't need to have that excess of funding. They need to build the technology, they need to build out the marketing, and they need to be lean in order to compete. So I don't believe in companies that raise $1 billion before they do anything through ICO. So that really is a selling point to me that B was doing this. But here's an example. They have a private sale. The private sale says inside of Silicon Valley, they're all Uber and they're all Google and they're all people that are working on B are inside of the Silicon Valley, in some ways, nepotism kind of environment. So they can ask their friends, and say, hey, you know, friends, family, and my neighbor across the street in Palo Alto, do you want to participate in our token? And if you do, they raised $5 million, and they sold out almost instantly. They were open for their first third of their funding goals. They sold $5 million to friends, family, participants, but it wasn't so much of a money grab as it was a strategic partnership grab. So they wanted to have advisors involved. They wanted to have people like Tim Draper and things like that involved. They wanted to have, you know, buzz in the environment. I love that they're B and that they can talk about buzz. So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to comment about is the public pre-sale. Now, this is the public pre-sale that just happened yesterday on the 2nd. And the public pre-sale, it had some stuff on YouTube, and they had different interviews, and I like the interviews that were made available and through the different channels that we all watch on YouTube about potential ICOs. So they had basically December 6th until the 15th was their private. December 2nd until January 19th is the public. However, they did sell out within like a couple of hours. And the reason that they sold out is because they're raising $5 million during this public pre-sale part. And the only people that can participate are what's called accredited investors. What that means is what I said. You have to show documentation that you make more than $200,000 per year. You have to show your tax returns. And you have to show your either net assets of $1 million. You either have to make $200,000 per year, or you have to show that you have net assets liquid of $1 million. Okay.
Well, it has to do with the SEC. I'm writing a lot of articles right now regarding the legal aspect of ICOs, and if you're an American citizen and if you're buying
they want to call it the same as a stock. They want to call a token the same as buying a stock from an SEC point of view. And they want to be able to obviously to document. We can get into a whole tangent conversation that I'm going to avoid doing about taxation. We can carry that over to a different conversation. But what I am going to say is, at least in this example, the accredited is another threshold that really limits the democracy, the crowdfunding element. So, So a couple of things is, first of all, when it comes to how much is distributed, let's go back down to here's their image. So out of a funding of 15 million that they were looking for funding, what they kept aside is a company reserve of 25%. What they kept aside for teams and advisors to incentivize venture capitalists to participate is 15%. What they kept aside for community reserve is 30%. So the $15 million raise for their ICO really is only encompassing 30% through token distribution, okay? 30%. So they're going to fund their entire project, and the lion's share, 70% of the value of the tokens really will be realized by the people that are either accredited, involved, or next door neighbors to the founders of this particular ICO. It's not a bad system, but just realize when you are buying a B token in the sale, or when you're buying it on an exchange later for a higher value, you bought basically 30% of the company or the project, but you paid 100% of the value. Okay? So that's one.
That's my question. Like, why does community reserve is 30% the same as whatever goes to the token sale?
Right. So again, they're not necessarily going to topple Airbnb. They will be successful. I do feel that this at the opening, because of the price point, and here's the other thing you had to require. So you had to require that you were going to, if you're going to be in the public pre-sale, one, you had to be accredited. Two, they're raising only $5 million. Three, you had to contribute 50 ETH, and you couldn't contribute more, and you couldn't contribute less. So what that means is when you do the math of $5 million as a hard cap, and you do the math about how many accredited investors at that hard cap could be involved, and you do you figure out that Ethereum yesterday was around 850 per Ether, right? It basically means that around 100 to 120 people could be approved to buy into the pre-sale. So private pre-sale, 1/3, public pre-sale, and the benefit of doing that, of doing this jump through this hoop, would have been a 30% bonus. So if you had bought in on the pre-sale, you would have a 30% more tokens because you bought on the pre-sale instead of waiting for January 31st, which will be the public sale. So I'm just commenting that this is a structure, and this structure works and it funds companies. But what I want to comment about is that Disney didn't do that. Disney sees how, the Dragonchain didn't do that. They left it in a democratized system. Now, when you do the math on the B token, which is a $15 million raise, then a token loosely will be about 14 cents. It will be averaged, but what that means is it will be around 14 cents per token per pre-involved person, right? Oops, let me go back here.
What is also interesting is if you can see on that slide, once the image, okay, the image is back there. So the public after the public pre-sale, we go for the full public sale, and it excludes the U.S. buyers. So U.S. investors cannot participate in that, which means they don't want to deal with the United States Security Commission, or they're selling securities, and that's why they're, they have such regulations.
I think that they languaged it incorrectly on this page, because if you see on the private is a strategic partner, on the public they're saying accredited, and when you say accredited, it means you have U.S. tax returns. So yeah, they are involving at the public. They're saying if you're going to participate, I'll comment in a moment. But if you're going to participate in the public, you had to be U.S. Really, because you had to show tax returns, or you had to show your company tax returns if you're going to participate in that way. And if you are public sale, I think they just languaged it incorrectly, and they were saying it was going to be open enough to where you didn't have to prove where your money came from. You didn't have to show your tax returns or be accredited, and therefore you could be a non-U.S. participant. You could be Chinese, South Korean, you could be anywhere, as long as you're participating by sending in at 0.1 ETH. So you can buy tokens in the public sale as a non-resident. It doesn't matter about visa, it doesn't matter about location, geography. As long as you send in 0.1 ETH, then you can buy some tokens before it becomes available on an exchange. So again, just to wrap it back up into what we're really talking about, which is Dragonchain, B is simply an example. It's not a bad ICO. It has high evaluation. I participated, so I believe in B as well. However, I participated because it's an ICO, and it looks like it's going to be a flip. It looks like it's going to be a high potential for a flip, kind of, instead of a long-term hold. When I look at long-term hold, where to put money, where to put value, where to hold assets that I convert from other altcoin projects, I'm looking seriously at Dragonchain. And I'm not saying that because I think that they ultimately will topple Ethereum. There are thousands of people that have good intentions when it comes to what Ethereum is, and there are dozens maybe of what quote unquote are going to be called Ethereum killers. But you don't have to necessarily kill Ethereum in order to thrive parallel or side by side in some ways, because different blockchains have different uses and different purposes and things like that. So when it comes to Dragonchain, I like it a lot. One, because of the economics of how they did the token sale and their best practice, and it wasn't a money grab. I don't really think that they needed funding. I think they did want to make this available and get more participation. And when we talk about value consideration, let's look at, for a moment, the market cap. This is right now, let me refresh. So on market cap, you look at Bitcoin, and you can see that it's, of course, the top, and it has, we talk about how much dominance it has inside of all of the tokens. It still has dominance, but it's really kind of low dominance by comparison. It's around 40% dominance at the moment. And then you see that a company that's not a company, but basically a quote unquote bank token of being Ripple, being number 2. Again, this is getting signed off on, participated in, and people are involved. I can't believe it's $3.28 right now. It's surged stock. This morning it was around $2. So luckily, even though it puts a bad taste in my mouth, I do have some Ripple, and I'm okay with it being $3.28 right now. But when it looks at Ethereum, oh, it's had a nice surge too. Ethereum, you can see it's 934. So that's actually maybe the all-time high for Ethereum. So right now the market
is actually like the super high position of Ethereum. Are we going to see it reaching 1,000 today?
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely pay attention to the dates of this distribution of this video, and maybe come back to it because it's a good example. There is a surge, and I think, as depressed as we were a month ago about the drop, and I have a lot of friends that started really getting into Bitcoin and into cryptos and stuff like that, and I told them to dollar average in and to participate, with sound mind and things like that. And some of them were just like me, sad. Oh man, the wind went out of it in December, right? When Bitcoin's dropped down and Ethereum's dropped down, and you get nervous and things like that, right? But what's interesting is I think that 2018 is going to be another big year, not just for ICOs, but for projects that are actually getting traction. Some of the roadmaps that were being put out in January of this year should be hitting those targets if they're actually putting the work in. So being funded can be a great experience for a project, but being funded doesn't mean that you've done the work. Doing the work is actually building out the actual product, project, service, and platform. So I like Bitcoin because it's a store of value. I don't really like Ripple, but it's kind of like working with the enemy, right? It's working with banking. And most likely a product like Ripple, a service like Ripple, will be on Coinbase. I believe that it will hit Coinbase, and I believe that it will hit and surge to $7 or $8 pretty quickly on Coinbase, because it's the lowest price point where you can buy a whole one out of what's available on Coinbase. So there's a reason about the psychology of why I think that Ripple will increase even from this level once it's on a major exchange available to the U.S. consumer. So Ethereum, of course, Bitcoin Cash, but again, we're talking about Dragonchain. Let's go down to Dragonchain.
Can you find it?
It was here. It's here. It's number 50. So it's in the top 50, which isn't super high, but realize that it was open to ICO in November. In the end of November, in December, actually around the December 3rd or 4th, which is only a month ago, is the first time it was available on an exchange.
Yeah.
Instantly, it went from basically 12 cents at value when you look at the ICO that really wasn't promoted. I mean, it was out there and people knew about it, but they knew about it for a year. So some people didn't pay attention to it. I didn't pay attention to it. I forgot about it, right? I was like, oh, I want to do that. But I got excited in Santa Monica, and I forgot about Dragon. I was like, oh, son of a bitch. They had a ICO. And then from 12 cents, I finally discovered it through KuCoin, which is a small exchange. It will be huge. If you're going to put money into something, definitely pay attention to Binance. Definitely pay attention to KuCoin. But
Binance is KuCoin right there. Just a little
on the market cap. Oh, let's go back to market cap. What do you mean about Binance? Let's look it up.
Yeah, position 43, position 40 are Binance and the KuCoin shares.
So on BNB, it's now $8.81. When BNB started, which is around around July, right? It was I don't know, 1 cent, 10 cents. It was 10 cents, and then it obviously had a surge, and it went up to $2.30. Maybe around August, when it first was becoming released to the Asian market and becoming maybe known to the U.S. market. I would think around October, November is really where the U.S. market might have started to see some what Binance could do. And then it really has taken off since December, once people start to understand what the BNB token is doing. It's a discount token. You're getting half off of your trading fees versus the other easy, convenience, expensive exchange like Coinbase, right? So when you look at Binance, I think Binance it surged almost to $11 yesterday or whatever on the first. So $11 on the BNB token, right? So you have that in hard storage, and then you say, well, I guess I'm not going to be using BNB tokens for discounts anymore, and you change your modus operandi on the exchange. So when you look at Binance and you look at KuCoin, let's look at KuCoin for a second. KuCoin is a similar model. Holy crap. KuCoin went up to $8. Wow. That's amazing. I was just telling Greg.
Major rise amongst all of the altcoins today. Like
it went just today, it went from $3.50 to almost $8.
Wow. As we were speaking,
I mean, we'll do a whole episode about KuCoin, and we'll do a whole episode about Binance. But the reason is because on BNB you have a discount. Yeah, you have a discount on tokens, right? And on how you purchase and trade. So it's cheaper than Coinbase. That's their play. And they're having an enormous success. But KuCoin shares is only 2 months old, October. I think the exchange began in the beginning of October. And back then, of course, it was 70 cents, 80 cents. Oh, look, it's going to be similar to Binance. But what's interesting, I just explained this last night to Greg, is that on KuCoin shares, if you're holding KuCoin shares, then you're paid out for holding the coin. The way that you're paid out is you can have 0.2%, which is less than half, of course, 0.5% of what Binance is. So it's cheaper on your purchase or trading fees. Another thing is, if you're holding KuCoin shares, everything that is traded on KuCoin generates a trading fee, right? So if somebody buys some obscure thing that's being offered on KuCoin, a trading fee results. If someone sells, a trading fee results. If you hold KuCoin shares, you get a percentage of all of the trades paid out as that token. So you may not believe in EOS. You may not believe in something like what is this, deep brain chain or something that might be new, right? You may not even have the time to research it. But did you know that you're getting paid out in DBC? Did you know that you're accumulating tokens on KuCoin shares because you hold KuCoin shares? So it's a way of passively accumulating all of the tokens that KuCoin Exchange offers. So I really think that KuCoin may overtake Binance. It only has 200,000 users right now. Binance has around 3 million. And if you scale up KuCoin shares value of their token, once it becomes realized to the Binance crowd, hey, maybe I should do something about KuCoin. Because right now, Binance is really a favorite. It's a darling. But once it becomes more known how KuCoin is operating, they may take over Binance. And when it comes to the American consumer, the American public that is starting to understand what cryptocurrencies are offering, when it comes to them saying, Coinbase is a way to get dollar into the system. Okay, I got to pay my 1%. Maybe I'll learn about GDAX and get into the whole 4 things that are offered and maybe the 5th thing that'll be offered with Ripple or something else, right? So you have limits about what you can buy, and you have an expensive way to convert dollar into a crypto. But then you, of course, send that out and you say, well, I like to trade on Bittrex. I like to pay, people that are a little bit more savvy, maybe they have these comfort zones about where they're doing their market analysis, where they're putting their investments, how easy the tools are to use, how familiar the tools are to use. And then you say, well, what's going on over KuCoin shares? Oh, well, I already use Binance. I don't really care about that. Until you say, where the heck is Dragoncoin? How can I find Dragoncoin?
Exactly.
I go, oh, it's only on KuCoin. What is KuCoin? Oh, that's an exchange. All right, I'll get in that. And then you learn, and you're like, holy moly, man. I think that the top 3 topics of this discussion are Dragonchain, interesting. This is not investment advice, but interesting. Binance, of course, interesting way to participate in altcoins and their model, why they have grown. KuCoin shares, very interesting. And very interesting because of their model. Now, Binance is in Hong Kong. KuCoin, I can't remember where they're based.
We need to check. We're going to do an episode on them anyway.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that really, man, I wish I hadn't sold my KuCoin share. I think I sold like half of my KuCoin shares 5 days ago, 6 days ago, to put more into a more stable platform like Dragonchain. But anyway, so it's very exciting time. I think that 2018, if you do your research, if you have a strong hand because you believe in the project team leadership and funding of that project, if you believe that that particular project and the network that they're involved with, the human-to-human interaction, can secure the intellectual and the labor force necessary to pull off that project, then it's a good time to be an investor. If you say, you know, this is 9 really smart guys that are sitting in a dorm room that want to come up with the next way to create AI. Yeah, these are really smart guys. And yeah, they have college associations and friendships and things like that. But really, and they may be able to get funded. But when you talk about marketing teams, you talk about access to Fortune 50 companies, you talk to the leadership. I'm talking about the leadership of these Fortune 50 companies. And you talk about government contracts, right, which are big, big money, right? That is what I see the potential of something like Dragonchain. I do see the potential of other exchanges as far as a profit. You say, oh, I want to get some KuCoin shares because this is how their model is, and I'll make a good return. 44% in a day is not a bad return, right? So you can look at profitability, and you can look at stability, and you can look at the marketing elements that might hype a coin or hype a project without actually having the meat and the people and the human labor in place to pull it off, right? So that's why I am very bullish on Dragonchain, and that's why I'm also happy that we have access to things like KuCoin shares or KuCoin. Let's just go to KuCoin so you can see it.
Yeah.
One last comment I'll make about KuCoin is because they are based in, where are they? Let's go to the website.
Oh, no, I don't know KuCoin. Just wanted to...
I forgot where they're based, but they are a little bit like looking at a slot machine, right? So they're not as simple, clean image as Coinbase of an exchange. They're not as trader-centric looking as stock trading kind of platform you may see if you're familiar with investments on conventional on other types of asset classes. They do look a little bit more like a slot machine as far as their image and their graphics. And whenever you do go through and you play a little movie and it's a cute little fox or something like that telling you about KuCoin shares and how it works, I think that that's because of the country that they're in. I forgot what country they're in.
Yeah.
Maybe it's probably
we gotta wrap it up already because my computer is about to die and I don't want it to die in the middle of the 16.
Okay, so this has been a great talk, and I really I am excited about what 2018 is going to hold. Again, Dragonchain, something to pay attention to, long-term hold as a platform. And also to pay attention and learn. I highly advocate that you should learn what you're putting your money into, putting your time into, and putting your emotion into when it comes to cryptocurrencies. And I think that as of January, whatever, this is the 3rd, I think, things are going to be heating up pretty quickly in this marketplace and over the summer. Like I said, keep in mind that by this time next year, 12 months from now, estimations are that the marketplace, the market cap will be about $5 trillion. So almost most projects that have any real substance to them, there are going to be a lot more scam coins. There's going to be a lot of places people can just dump their money and lose their money. So definitely do your due diligence. But when you're looking at where to put value of your time, your resources, I think this is going to be a banner year. I think that just because of the swell of the market as a whole, $5 trillion versus today, which is 600 million or whatever the number was, 600 billion, is you know, a 9-fold, 10-fold. So we'll be looking at this 1 year from now and see what has come from this conversation.
Yeah, and definitely if our, you know, predictions are right and if everything goes the way we imagine it will go, we're all going to make money, and if we make money, we need to pay taxes. And so taxes.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about taxes on the next episode, because that's one of the hot topics. Is it's not what you make in life, it's what you keep.
Yeah. So the next episode we're going to dedicate definitely towards the discussion on the taxes and on all the new regulations, and it's going to be interesting, especially for all the U.S. residents, because we're going to be definitely talking about U.S. taxes and not any other country. So thank you so much, everybody, for participation. I saw that at some point we had 5 people viewing us, so it's not bad already. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary. Bye-bye.
All right, you have a good one. Ciao.